Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the real estate experience. As always, it's definitely a pleasure where we try to bring as much information we can from some of the top professionals around Southern California. I'm your host, Travon Smith. I know, hey, I'm a little bit under the weather, but what we said we're going to do, we're going to make it happen. But today we have Miss Lillian. How you doing, Miss Lillian?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Travon?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's definitely a pleasure. I always like to start off with the intro. I've got to talk to you a little bit as far as what you do. But if you can go ahead and explain to our audience as far as what you do and maybe why you got into it.
Sure. So I'm an attorney. I specialize in estate planning and probate. And estate planning is the preparation of all the documents that you would normally prepare in anticipation of passing away or becoming incapacitated. So that is doing your will or your living trust. So I've been doing that for about 20 years. And the way that I got into that actually is I used to be a litigator, and that is the kind of lawyer that you normally see on TV. So
Hmm.
the one that goes to court and fights the good fight.
Yes.
And uh, so I was in court one day and I was not in this area of law. This was many, many moons ago. And I heard a case being called that was not my case. And it was three kids who had been fighting over their dead dad's money. And this was the end of a case. And the three lawyers were asking for the judge's permission to distribute the estate and
Hmm.
to approve attorney's fees. And what we all heard was a judge say, I have before me an estate that's worth $1.3 million, and I have before me a petition for attorney's fees for $1 million.
Hmm.
And everybody gasped.
Hmm.
And I don't mind, because I'm not proud, admitting that I went home and I cried.
Hmm.
And I thought some poor guy spent his life putting together this nest egg for his kids, and three lawyers are walking away with $1 million. And so at that point, I thought, what can I do to help people avoid this happening? And that is when I decided to shift my practice towards estate planning and helping people avoid this probate
Hmm.
experience, which is how people tend to get into conflicts and how they tend to lose a lot of money. And estate planning is this way how we can help people avoid court and how we can help them preserve money and maximize the money that goes towards their family instead of towards lawyers and attorneys' fees.
No, I'm gonna start off with a couple things. Number one, I bet you was a great trial lawyer. I could tell. I could
I
tell.
thank
I could tell because I'm a fan of lawyers. I'm a fan of law shows. I definitely respect the art of just the way the lawyer is able to communicate with the person that may not know nothing to communicate with somebody who may know just as much as them. That's number one. Number two is what I call that. There's plenty of careers in life, but what I call that is God's work, what you do. It's a blessing for people like you to help others who may not understand what can occur and what can happen in an unfortunate situation where we could all be taken advantage of. So I'm a fan of you already. So I just want everybody to know that this is Miss Lillian. So everybody definitely check her out. I want to talk a little bit about the probate process for people that may not understand what that means, because just like the argument that you heard in the case you heard, sometimes people wait too late. So can you talk a little
right,
bit about the probate process and how they can, like, why would they contact somebody like you sooner than later than wait too?
right. So I think what people don't realize is that in order to transfer property when someone passes away, they can't just do that on paper. There are laws that regulate it. And I think a lot of people think that it's much simpler than it is. Like if you have mom and dad, and mom and dad have passed away and there's only one kid, obviously it's going to be the kid's house. But that doesn't mean that we can just transfer the house. And so the probate process is a legal court process where a court has to appoint somebody who's in charge. That's going to be the executor. We've always heard of an
Mhm.
executor. or a personal representative or an administrator, the court is going to appoint somebody to be in charge of the estate. And it's the court's job to figure out legally who's entitled to the estate, how things are going to be divvied up. And part of the process is to figure out, are there debts? Did the deceased person have debts? Because all those debts have to get paid first. The credit cards, the tax man always gets paid before everybody. That mortgage has to get paid. And if you're not planning on selling the house, that mortgage has got to get paid
Hmm.
off. You can't just move into the house. And so part of the probate process is to ensure that all the debts are paid off before anyone gets anything, and then to make sure that the right people get the right things in the right percentages.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that is a very long process in LA County in particular, and it's very expensive. And so I think that people don't realize that it is mandated, meaning it is required. And there are very few exceptions on how you can sidestep it. So one of the ways is sometimes when you don't have any money and you don't own any property, you don't have to have a probate. But
Hmm.
if you've got real estate in California, there's going to be a probate. And the one way that we can avoid that is by putting the house in a trust.
Yeah.
So when people hear trust, they automatically think of rich people,
Hmm.
famous trust fund baby.
Yes, ma'am.
But that's not what for those houses, pay off the debts, do all those things privately without a judge and without paying the costs of probate. Does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. And I'm glad you're explaining it and breaking it down like you are for the
Yeah.
person that may not understand the process. Because I think now they have a better understanding of why it's a necessity, especially with the people I deal with, people that, are tuned in. They have properties or trying to buy properties. It doesn't stop there. You know,
Right.
so I'm listening. So one thing we were talking about, like the cost of probate.
Right.
So that's why they would contact you as far as how to originate this process and things amongst that, correct?
Right. So one thing I want to add is that a lot of people think that if you're married, because we're in a community property state, you don't have anything to worry about. And that's sort of true, sort of not. It depends on when they're buying a house with you, how they take title. A lot of that matters. But also, people forget that mom or dad is going to pass away, but eventually the other one's going to pass away.
Yeah.
And that's when you run into the problem. So maybe you won't have a probate problem when the first person dies,
Okay.
but eventually the second one's going to die, and then the
Mm,
kids will have a problem. So it's important to do that planning, even if you've got a married couple. But yes, so the probate fees, how we calculate them in California is actually set by law. So this is not something that's negotiable where some
mhm.
lawyers are cheaper than others. It's written into California law, and we calculate them based on the fair market value of the house or on the value of the whole estate. So right now we're going to talk about the house, but remember that we're calculating the checking account, the
Okay.
investment account, the car, all
Mhm.
those things get added in. And what we look at is the whole market value. So if you have a house, let's say it's worth 800,000, right? That's a
Mhm.
nice average value to a house in Southern California. Maybe it's got a $600,000 mortgage on it.
Mhm.
And people think, well, we only have $200,000. We
Mhm.
don't have an $800,000 house. But when I get paid fees, I'm getting a percentage of
Yeah.
$800,000.
Okay.
That's why that's so expensive, is because it's not based on 200, it's based on 800. So if you have an 800, I have a calculator on my website, so you can figure this out on your
Okay.
own. If you have an $800,000 house, just the house, and the person passes away, you're looking at, between attorney's fees and executor fees, almost $40,000 in fees
Okay.
for
Yeah.
so all $20,000 for the attorney, $20,000 for the executor.
Yes, ma'am.
So to get that house to transfer to the heirs looking at about $40,000, and that's just for the house, not including all those other assets.
Yes, ma'am. But I
So
think,
when people, that's a lot of money.
no, yeah, but people like you are important, and that's why we, with our jobs, it's vitally important to be transparent because
Right.
I'm going to get 3%. You you have to either buy the house or sell the house. The other agent's going to get 3%. There's no going around it. We're not trying to trick anybody or
Yeah.
or make up numbers. But it's important, when we're dealing with this kind of mathematics and this kind of real estate, um, that people know what's going on. So I'm glad we got this information out so people can
Right.
know, like when they come down and sit down with you or whomever, like, oh my gosh, he's trying to take all my money. No, this is the guidelines, just like a real estate agent, just like a commission from getting a car. I mean, you've
Right.
put your due diligence into working and your career throughout all these years for a reason, just like I do what I do for a reason.
Right.
So, but we're here
But
to help.
also,
We're here to help people.
exactly. And when they speak to an attorney who's going to hopefully custom draft, avoid all those, the legal Zooms or the things you pull
Yeah,
out of a book. That is bad news.
mhm,
Most of us have taken those to probate because they have failed. Don't do those, but go to an attorney. When you go to an attorney to draft these documents for you, and that attorney says that everyone charges different fees, but that attorney says, oh, between your trust and your wills and your healthcare directive and all the documents they prepare, they say, well, this is going to be 3,500 or 4,500 or 5,000, whatever they charge you. And you think, oh my God, this attorney's making so much money.
yeah,
What you should be thinking is, if I pay this 3,500 or 4,000, my children won't spend $40,000 when I
yeah,
die.
yeah,
$50,000 when I die. So
yeah,
this money, it's not that the attorney is charging you too much money. It's the attorney is saving you from going through 18 months of probate,
yes,
potentially. And that, by the way, $40,000 is minimum.
yeah,
If your kids fight, we can charge on top of that for litigation fees. And
yes,
that's where that $1 million came out of. That's
mhm,
because three kids were arguing and they hired lawyers to fight. So that $40,000 was just to put the probate through. That wasn't with any conflict.
yeah,
So if you're going to go into probate and they develop conflict and they each hire attorneys to fight it out, they're racking up attorneys' fees on
yeah,
top of it. So the money that you're spending for attorneys to draft documents is to prevent your kids from spending all that money later on.
yes, ma'am.
So it feels like you're spending a lot of money, but what you're actually doing is
Mm.
saving your kids heartache, headache, and money later on.
And I know people that their houses have been in, I'm not sure the proper term for it, where their house is just on hold and it's been 4 to 5 years because they didn't have the probate attorneys or whatnot. And it's to the point where they're building so much just debt, they're gonna eventually let the houses go.
Right.
So
And
so
sometimes
this is something that another reason why that you're not kind of important, that what you do is very important.
that's right. And probates come in different flavors. Sometimes you don't have full authority. If you have to go through probate, sometimes the executor doesn't have full authority. They need court approval to sell the
Okay.
house. And if there's a mortgage, somebody's got to be paying that mortgage while you go through the court process to get approval to
Yes,
sell
ma'am.
that house. That house can get foreclosed on. If nobody in the family
Mhm.
has money to pay the mortgage while you're going through this process, you could lose the house while you're waiting for authority to sell it, right? And
Yes.
so that's tricky. If you've got the house in trust, you hire Travon to list the house,
Yeah.
show the title company a copy of the trust, and you sell the house. That's
Yes.
it. Done. It's
Yeah.
no different than a regular sale transaction.
Mhm.
So you have a trustee who's appointed, they sign all the papers, and that house is sold. You call the bank and you say, hey, we're selling the house. We need an extra couple months. You show them that you've listed the property and it's done. No
Yes, ma'am.
foreclosure. So if you have a family that can't afford to keep up the payments, you're okay if you've
Yes,
got that trust.
Miss Lilly. I've learned so much. today. I definitely want to keep in contact with you on and have you come back on somewhat of a regular basis, and we can talk about different subjects because this is something I think people need to be aware of, be educated on, as well as diverse and understanding everything that can go right and everything that can go wrong. Can you tell everybody where they can reach you at, whether website, phone number, email, or
Sure.
however you feel comfortable?
Sure. So my website is levofflaw.com. And the way that is spelled is Levof as in Frank, F as in Frank, law, LAW.com. That's my last name, levofflaw.com. Well, the Levoff part.
Yes.
The phone number is 323-230-6630. And you can also email me. I go by Lilly, Lilly, lily@levofflaw.com. You're welcome to peruse my website. There is a calculator on there because everything's transparent.
Okay.
It has instructions. Add the value of your house, your checking account, everything together, plug in a number, and it'll tell you exactly what kind of fees your family can expect to pay if you go through probate.
I want to thank you again. Like I said, I can't wait, to share this information. I'm in a group of maybe over 100 agents, so I'm gonna share your information with them as well. Because I always see people say, "Do you have a probate lawyer or whatever?" And I never really understand exactly why. I mean, I understood probate, but not why they had a probate lawyer to a certain extent. But now I have a great understanding, so I'm gonna share your information and make sure we get your information out to as many people as possible. I know you have a busy schedule. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for
Thank you
hanging
for
out with
coming.
us. No, it was definitely my pleasure. So thank you again, and we appreciate you hanging out with us.
Thanks. Have a wonderful day and have a great weekend.
You too.